Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, February 10th, 2026, and today we are talking about the many species of humans who once walked the earth together, valuing our labor, and I'm going to bring you along while I start some seeds. So let's do it. All right, everyone, welcome to Tilth Tuesday, your weekly reminder that you can get living soil compost and potting mixes from the bona fide nerds over there at Tilth Soil. Check out Nathan on the Composter Podcast, Season 4, Episode 3, or head to tilthsoil.com to learn more. In fact, they gave me this nice little shirt that I'm wearing. Shouts to that. Love me a good shirt. I hope everyone is having a good start to your weeks. We are a few days into the Winter Olympics, and they are proving to be a very enticing distraction for me when I have a million other things that I actually need to be doing, so that's fun. I guess at least it's February and not June like the World Cup. But honestly, that mixed curling semi-final yesterday had my heart racing just the same as a World Cup final. So I don't know how. I didn't even really know anything about curling like 5 days ago, but now I'm very invested. Have you got your spot picked out for the great backyard bird count this weekend? I hope so. We're teaming up with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology to get people out and counting birds this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. You do not have to be a pro birder for this. I am certainly not one. Anyone can do this. You just download the Merlin app, and if you want to, you can just set that thing outside to pick up, bird audio for 15 minutes, and it will tell you what birds are around, and then, you can log those. Easy stuff. Or you can also just get some binoculars and or a camera or whatever and try to identify a few birds. Might as well do that. It's a good opportunity to learn a few bird calls or a few birds by sight because birds rock. We need them. Birds are awesome. But they're also in trouble. So these numbers will help us to understand which birds are and are not thriving and why. I'll link more info in the show notes. Also unrelated to birds, though I do see them regularly when I'm in the greenhouse this time of year. At the end of this episode, we're going to jump to the greenhouse and do another in-field segment. So just let me know what you all think of that. This one is on seeding tips. So that's from me, but while you all are in the field, don't hesitate to, take a 20-second farm video clip and send that over to Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. We will share that here, and we love seeing what you all are up to always. The person from Denver sent us a video clip of no snow. And I saw something the other day that Florida has had more snow than parts of Utah. So that's cool. Anyway, so this weekend I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. And as usual, I like to tell you about the random rabbit holes that I go down on Tuesdays. So anyway, the rabbit hole I found myself going down this particular weekend was about Neanderthals and other human species. As you may recall, I've been fascinated for a long time about ancient Europe, and I guess sort of my own indigenous roots in France, Great Britain, etc. I hate that I have almost no connection to that history, and so I enjoy sort of piecing it all together myself to understand, my own history, but specifically my agricultural and natural history. And anyway, this led me, somewhat to my surprise, to Neanderthals. Not literally, but also not literally. I'll explain. So to back up, we tend to think of humans as one, thing that we sort of evolved into, that like march of man idea where a hairy biped slowly turns into a standing, less hairy dude. But the historical reality is much more complicated than that because, yes, there was a gradual path to Homo sapiens, but there was also a gradual path to many other human species as well, some of which are vaguely reflected or represented in the March of Man. However, more interestingly to me, there was a time when Homo sapiens, us, would have been on the earth doing our thing at the exact same time as, and in some cases alongside and along with, other human species. What I mean is that tens of thousands of years ago, Neanderthals, to use this example, would have been the main populace of Europe, but they didn't just straight up die out. Homo sapiens moved into Europe and maybe killed some Neanderthals, maybe some Neanderthals died from a shared disease, but also some procreation definitely happened, which is why many of us have upwards of 3% Neanderthal DNA and so on. This sort of commingling went on for potentially thousands of years. Thousands, yeah. But it wasn't just Neanderthals. There were several species of humans on the earth tens of thousands of years ago around that time, all sort of living at the same time as Homo sapiens, again, us. So in the same way we have, like different species of birds. it's a good example, or bears or whatever, today, there were several different species of usses, all kind of, slowly moving in and out of each other's lives, though in some cases there were also human species who lived on relatively inaccessible islands that were very small, the humans, and they even hunted cow-sized mammoths, which sounds very cute, but was probably not very cute from their perspective. Anyway, we tend to think of Neanderthals and other humans as simple cave people. I mean, calling someone a Neanderthal is a pejorative largely reserved for insulting someone's intelligence. But archaeologists are finding, and they can feel free to elaborate in the comments, that's not so much the case. Neanderthals had customs, tools, jewelry, built shelters, etc. Things we associate with the novel intelligence of early Homo sapiens were not solely of Homo sapiens. And they, in fact, probably traded technologies, ideas, and customs amongst these other species. There is a lot of speculation as to what happened to these many other human species, and it was likely a mixture of things like the climate changing, being bred out, diseases, all the things. But we obviously know there are not a bunch of different humans running around now, currently, some tall, some short, all quite distinct, and I think that's fascinating. Now, to be clear, I'm not suggesting we sequence the DNA of these, other humans and try to recreate them or anything like that, though if the Jurassic Park franchise folks need another idea, unless that one's already been covered, in which case I've probably lost track at this point. But I always enjoy when my perspective of the world, of humanity, shifts so that I can better understand the natural world we live in now and how we got to this place where we have so little love for it and so little appreciation for diversity. I found myself fascinated by this long gone world where there were all these different human species roaming around, having their own agriculture, having their own hunting methods, all these things. And then the current world where these species can be counted among the many things that have lived, flourished, and then gone extinct on our planet. I don't know. I thought that was interesting, and I look forward to hearing what you all think. Otherwise, let's take a quick break. When we come back, earning hard or hardly earning, how's that for a transition? We'll see. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Certified Naturally Grown. Certified Naturally Grown is the grassroots certification built by farmers for farmers. C&G gives local growers like you recognition for the commitment of producing food without synthetic chemicals by assuring customers that your practices are verified. C&G's peer review inspection model keeps the cost of certification low while creating opportunities for knowledge sharing amongst a strong, supportive network of like-minded farmers. Apply today to be certified before the season ramps up. Applications processed within 7 days. Learn more at naturallygrown.org. Today's episode is also brought to you by Tend. Farming is hard, running it shouldn't be. Meet Tend, the purpose-built platform built by farmers for farmers. Plan your season, map your farm, and track every task from seed to sale. No more spreadsheets, no more guesswork, just smart, seamless workflows. Tend adapts to your farm, 1 acre or 100. Real-time inventory, sales, labor, tracking, traceability, and analytics all in one place. You grow food, flowers, fruit, and more. Tend helps you to grow smarter. Start free today at tend.com. That's TEND.com. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from this work, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions now. Today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Martin Kamaru, who writes, quote, "Hey Jesse, I wanted to start a conversation about a pattern I see in general, but especially in the food growing world. Undervaluing one's labor combined with an overabundance of willingness to work hard. While work ethic is vital, I feel it often becomes a detriment because it replaces efficiency with brute force, especially as hard work, even if inefficient, is often seen as virtue. On the hobby scale, people often chase quote-unquote free inputs like driving around to collect leaf bags for chicken feed, mulch, or compost without calculating the real costs. If that fits your values on resource use or it brings you a lot of satisfaction, great, but people often talk about doing these things to quote-unquote save money. Once you factor in actual costs, gas, vehicle wear, and the opportunity cost of time, it's often cheaper and less work to just work a few hours at a job and buy what you need. On the commercial scale, I see this constantly in the mushroom community. Growers grind 60 to 70 hours a week just to keep the lights on because they accept $3 to $4 a pound from distributors. Their margins are so low they need 6 employees just to survive, and they are often too stressed to stop and realize they could do half as much work by cutting employee headcount down to 2 or 3 and targeting chefs at $9 to $12 a pound. Even the amount of work it takes to produce 1 pound of mushrooms is often worse than smaller growers. as they are too stressed to think about ways to optimize their workflow. They go on, to be clear, I'm not judging here. I used to be super bad at this too. People like you and Mossy Creek help snap me out of it, or at least make sure that I am making an informed decision. What are your thoughts? End quote. Okay, so I love this, and I did have to summarize this a little bit, but I wanted to keep as much in there as possible because I thought it was a really good comment. But essentially, there are a lot of growers out there who work hard, but don't always make a profit or actually earn enough, and that's the nature of a lot of small businesses. But in farming, the quote-unquote hard work is actually hard, like physical, hot, heavy, all the things. Not to mention, we have very tight margins in farming. Take some simple generic numbers, for instance. If you want to gross, meaning, without calculating the costs, like taking the costs out of it, $100,000 on an acre of land, and you arbitrarily sell like $4 units on average, a unit being maybe a pound or a bag of something or a bunch of something, you need to sell 25,000 units that year just to hit your gross sales. That's no small feat, but that is still gross income and not net income, net being when you subtract all the costs. So in order for you, the producer, to actually earn $100,000 or whatever, you really have to make more than $100,000, first of all, but also you really have to be efficient all across the board. Costs have to be kept low, work has to be done efficiently, time has to be respected. Those 25 to 50,000 units have to each be as profitable as possible. So yeah, as Martin suggests, in order to do that, you cannot be driving around all the time collecting your own mulching materials. You cannot often be growing your own seed because it's generally cheaper to pay someone else to do that. Your days have to be well mapped out, and you definitely cannot favor hard labor over smart labor. That's not sustainable. And when you're 65 or whatever, and maybe not as agile as you once were, you will not regret having systems in place that are easier on your body. I like hard work, to be sure. I actually enjoy it, and there is nothing wrong with having a little of that in your day. It's like the watermelons. I love growing watermelons, even if they are worthless financially. They are worth something to me and my neighbors. I like doing labor sometimes too, just for goofs. It makes me feel good. So it doesn't have to be all about profit, but in order to keep farming, to keep doing this important work, it has to be mostly about making a living without killing yourself. And to be clear, I'm not always the best at this. I do a ton of experimentation on this farm, and obviously I can justify that more than most people can because it's, for the show. But the reality is that one could not run a successful business playing around too much. This is a business. That's it. Sober, technical, numbery. Farming is a business like any other, even if it's cooler and more fun than most others. And you only know if you're saving money not by taking the free thing, but by doing the math to see what the free thing actually saved you financially. So yeah, those are my thoughts. The more you can take that part seriously, the more fun you can have, the less stressful it will be, the more ecological stuff you can do, etc. Take care of the business side, and the business side will take care of the other stuff that you want to do. The watermelons, the compost making, hanging out with your kids, helping your neighbors, counting birds, all of that stuff. I get that sometimes you can't afford the load of compost, but you can afford to shovel some manure in the back of your truck and compost it yourself. And there's little that can be done about that, about the capital that you lack to buy the compost in the moment. I get that. I've been there more times than I would like to admit, but that is also a business reality. That compost should have been factored into the business plan and into the budget, a brand of lesson I learned all too late, so hopefully I'm helping you to learn that now. Anyway, I'll let you all add your thoughts as well. Is there a time when you felt like something you were doing was saving you money only to realize that it would have been cheaper just to buy it time-wise? Love to hear those stories. Otherwise, we'll take a quick break, and when we get back, you can meet me in the garden. Be right back. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Peaceful Heritage Nursery. If you're looking for hardy and resilient fruit trees, berry plants, or pawpaw trees, then check out Peaceful Heritage Nursery. Peaceful Heritage Nursery LLC is a mail-order nursery shipping premium quality fruit trees and berry plants across the USA. They specialize in resilient, non-GMO plant genetics for small growers. Their diverse selection includes berries, cold hardy figs, passion fruits, gumi, mulberry, and much more. They're famous for their diverse selection of premium quality grafted pawpaw trees. 5-star Google ratings and customer testimonials attest to their commitment to excellence in quality and service. Find them at peacefulheritage.com and join the mailing list. Once again, find them at peacefulheritage.com. Use the promo code NOTILL for 10% off your first order. All right, back to the show. All right, so we're going to do this last segment in the greenhouse, but before we jump in to that greenhouse, fair warning that this may not be at all interesting or interesting enough if you're listening in podcast form, and if so, for that, I apologize. Of course, I do try to make it interesting for the audio listener. So let me know what you all think, because I'd like to keep doing these sorts of infield segments as the season rolls on, because I have lots of stuff out there to talk about in person, and would love to hear if you like them and any thoughts on how to improve them that aren't like hire a crew and have them come film you, because, we don't even really have the budget to do what we already do. So anyway, here's me a few days ago, cold in seeding. All right, so I'm getting ready to seed a bunch of, broccoli and some cilantro. The other day I did some tomatoes, and I recorded that for you all, but it was shockingly boring what I recorded. So I'm going to try to make it a little bit more interesting, talk a little bit of just about seeding kind of as I do it, but also just stuff that, I may not think about when I'm not here in the greenhouse like I am right now if you're not watching on YouTube. So a couple things. Well, the first thing I'll say about seeding is that this is probably the biggest bottleneck on our farm. And it's been that way for the entirety of our farm. And the reason is because we use soil blocks. There's not really a drop seeder yet for soil blocks. Not really. I mean, you can make one. There's people that have made them. But for us, for all the different soil blocks that we use, it's a little bit difficult. However, I'm hopeful with the Swift blockers that they'll make a drop seeder for the Swift blockers. And what I mean by drop seeder is a seeder that you basically put the seeds in, and then you pull a little button or a latch or something, and they all drop in right into the spot that you need them. So basically you shake them around into little holes, pull it back, all the seeds drop out at the same time. The reason that's complicated with like soil blocks versus a cell tray is that the blocks are not always in exactly the same position, except for with the Swift blockers, which makes it a little bit more realistic. But Swift blocker, to my knowledge, at least as to date, hasn't come out with one yet. But if they do in the future, that's going to be a huge purchase for us. Until then, though, however, we've been doing it by hand, and it's been fine. I think this year I've got to solve it one way or another, though, because it takes up a little bit too much time. Usually what I'm doing is I'm just putting the seeds in my hand, and I'm just picking one or two out at a time and dropping them into the soil blocks. And there's nothing wrong with that. That works fine. My system is pretty simple. Depending on the seed, I'll put one or two, or sometimes for cilantro, I'm going to put up to 5 seeds per block. But in general, I'm putting those seeds down. I'm labeling it. Always have masking tape and a pen handy, a marker, and I will label it on the sides as opposed to the front, like the long side versus the short front. And the reason for that, I don't really have a good reason for that, except that how I usually divide my trays would be like in the middle. So if I'm doing 2 varieties or several varieties of tomatoes, for instance, like I did the other day, then I would want a label on each side of the tray so that I know no matter which way I'm looking at it, what variety that I'm looking at. And then, another thing that I'll mention is that when I'm seeding, like I will seed all these trays, and then at the end, I'll put fresh soil mix over top to trap in a little bit of that humidity, that moisture. Some growers will use vermiculite, which I don't think is related to worms, but I guess it could be. No, it's not related to worms. But it's just like a mineral that you can buy that you can sprinkle over top that helps to preserve the moisture, and it really gets really good germination. I've used it in the past, but we started just using soil mix because instead of importing a whole other thing onto the farm, we're just going to use the one thing we already import a lot of. So we use a little bit of soil mix right over top, and that has that same effect. Like just a little bit goes a long way. Certain crops like lettuce, you don't want to cover very much, but you want to get a little coverage on. Same with onions. But something like broccoli, you can, put a little bit more coverage on. Something like cilantro, since I'm putting the big seeds and I'm putting so many in here, then you can put a fair amount on. There's other stuff you could put over top, but that's generally been the best success. Or you could go through and close each one of those. We used to do that with soil blocks too, and that is just massively time consuming. It is more cost effective just to use the soil mix sprinkled over top than it would be to pinch each of the blocks closed. Oh, and then for pests, you got to know which crops are going to attract pests. Most of the cilantro is not too bad, but sometimes rodents will eat it. Same with broccoli, same with anything really. Like you just never know. Sometimes they just don't have a lot of food and they're going to go for whatever seed you put in there. So what I'll do is actually, maybe I have another one I'll show you. So let's say I'm putting something they really like squash, right? To prevent rodents from getting in there, I just put an empty tray right over top. And that usually does the trick. I've never had any issues with that. And then once it germinates, it's usually not an issue, though, of course, rodents will eat stems if it's really early in the season. The other thing with that is have them on a card table away from anything they can climb up, because these card tables they can't get up on top of. And then the other thing is these are going to be on a heat mat. The heat mat is just going to, get these warm enough to germinate. So what I'll do is, since it's like 30 degrees outside right now, so I will keep these on a heat mat in our greenhouse, and then I'll actually throw a row cover over top, and then that way it'll trap in all the humidity that I need for these to germinate with that heat mat. That heat mat's not going to get them really, really hot. This is the Johnny's one, and I think it just gets a handful of degrees above room temperature, but it'll keep them from freezing, and it'll get them, warm enough to germinate in a few days. And usually with that extra cover, like something over top of them, they do fine. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the humidity dome over these peppers. And the humidity dome is just, it's like a little miniature greenhouse that you can put on stuff, but honestly, it's really just for our grafting. But I'll use it sometimes early in the spring for these early germination crops that I want, or something that needs a lot of heat when it's not very hot, like it isn't right now. But anyway, I'm going to seed a bunch of these, and you all can let me know what questions you have about seeding or soil blocking. We'll try and answer them more in the greenhouse. We'll keep doing these in-field ones if they are at all interesting. And if I come up with anything else while I'm seeding, I may just pop it on here and let Mike deal with it in editing. Yep. All right, was that cool? No idea, but you all let me know. Otherwise, I think that's it for this Tilth Tuesday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and/or follow wherever you are getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors, and if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of February, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to, unfortunately for Jessica's story, there were no new signups yesterday. We will be back to those actually on Thursday. We're not going to do one tomorrow. But anyway, we'll be back to the story on Thursday. So thanks for watching and/or listening. We'll see you tomorrow for a special episode. That'll be fun. No idea what that means. I guess we'll find out. Bye. Are you not afraid of the